a difficult job to speak after lunch. I know everybody is wanting a coffee. I think they are reluctant to turn on the machine. I'll try to make this engaging. First and foremost, thank you, Minister, for hosting us and for your speech. I found your support for Ukraine very heartwarming. Now we are seeing sort of that the war is becoming a new normalcy, and I deeply believe that it shouldn't become a new normal. And second, more and more I think we're talking about the settling in of fatigue. And I think we should all work against it. And I will try to tell you my perspective about how culture diplomacy can help with that. But Mark, thank you very much. I found the first part of the day quite surprising, actually. Every speaker surprised us with something, but it was very, very engaging, very interesting, and thank you to everybody. It gave me a lot of food for thought. I'm sure it gave you food for thought as well, be it the historical description of the multilateral response to the Skopje earthquake by President Ivanov, or the really interesting musical presentation of President Josipovic. I've attended an IMF meeting in Dubrovnik, and I never thought an IMF meeting could have such cultural events. It was extraordinary, and I think Croatia achieves a lot with its music diplomacy. And also, I thought I had coined the term civilizational choice in terms of European integration, but it seems like President Stoyanov did that before me. And it's always good to remember that there were those who have laid out the path before. Let me tell you just a little bit about Moldova and how my government came to power and turned from a developmental perspective into severe crisis management mode. In 2020, President Maia Sandu won the presidency of Moldova. This came after Moldova made a little bit of a bad reputation for itself with large banking fraud and oligarchization. There was an oligarch who influenced a lot of, or captured state institutions and influenced a lot of decisions. And, people really rose against it. And they said, look, we not only want a pro-European government in words, we want a pro-European government in deeds. We want people who actually hold the genuine pro-European values. And Maia Sandu was the symbol of that. And she won with a very large majority, with a lot of participation from the diaspora, and then the Party of Action and Solidarity, which I represented, won a majority in parliament. And we were very excited to have the president, the government, the parliament, all looking in the same direction, all working, towards making Moldova a candidate country to the European Union. It happened, but in a completely different way than we envisaged. It happened quicker, but at a much bigger cost for our people and particularly for the Ukrainian people. And we never imagined that, we had to deal with the fourth wave of the pandemic. We expected that, but then very quickly, within 2-3 months of the mandate of the government, we had a energy blackmail by Russia. This was before the Ukrainian war. And, we had to very quickly figure out ways in which we can resist this blackmail. Like literally, the gas was cut, and they wouldn't sign an agreement. And we got to a very low point in our transportation network where the network could have failed at any moment. And for the first time in Moldova's history, we actually had to access international markets and buy on the world market. And that actually made a difference because it gave us leverage to sign the agreement. But this was a very clear demonstration of, hard power that would be employed towards a pro-European government in Moldova. But we couldn't even imagine what would follow. And we talked to our partners, we watched the news, and we tried to prepare, because everybody, you remember, there was this discussion that there are troops on the border of Russia and Ukraine, that there would be a war. To the last day, we couldn't imagine that such a full-scale war would happen. It just didn't make sense for us. And I want you to think about this thought. If Russia was capable of employing soft power, if Russia was good at culture diplomacy, then probably it would be more effective in our part of the world. So, this approach, this sort of constant blackmail, hard power, this is not, how our people want to live, and it is a civilizational choice. And I think that this attitudes of the people showed very clearly in how Moldovans handled the refugee crisis. Very quickly, the border between Ukraine and Moldova after 24th of February, there were thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of people on the border. Moldova received 5 times more at the highest, at the peak point, than the top capacity as estimated by the UNHCR. And in my previous work elsewhere, not in Moldova, I actually have visited refugee camps in Jordan, and I have seen how some of the refugee crises have been handled. And I was very, very worried with these tens of thousands of people, and I almost could imagine that we would have people in the streets and maybe a pushback from the society. But what we saw is that people rose to sort of support the Ukrainians in a way that we didn't expect. Much longer before the government, even though we prepared and we had contingency plans, and we had sort of a step-by-step plan on how to engage. People were already at the border offering transportation services, offering beverages and drinks and food and accommodation, and a lot of the Ukrainian refugees were received in just regular Moldovan families. And I went to visit an elderly French teacher in Chisinau. I think she was perhaps 85, and she decided to host Ukrainian refugees. And she was saying, I remember when during the Second World War, the bridge between Romania and Moldova was bombed, and I was fleeing with my mother. And I cannot, live without supporting these people who are in the same situation as I was in the Second World War. And so many people did that. And we had the attention, the international attention, and it was really impressive how we were helped, like when we had too many refugees and we couldn't process even all of them. We had these green lanes with Romania, for example, where we would take them from border to border in buses, and they would be processed in Romania. So this actually expanded our capacity. We had countries offering to take on refugees that had medical problems, for example. But ultimately, it was this rise, this solidarity of the people that allowed us to handle the refugee situation in such a way that we have a completely different attitude, actually, of Ukrainians towards Moldovans. When I meet Ukrainians, they constantly show this gratitude. And very quickly, Moldova turned from the country where the billion was stolen to a small country with a big heart that, punched above its weight and rose to the occasion and, handled this refugee crisis in an exemplary way. And very early on, we were thinking, like, what type of an approach we should take. We were very worried, especially in the beginning, that the war would actually expand to Moldova. And we saw these maps that the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, was showing openly, where Moldova was, there were all kinds of arrows towards Moldova, and the Transnistrian region, that is a separatist region where we have Russian troops to this day. And we were very worried. But for example, from the very beginning, we took decisions not to stop concerts or not to stop cultural events, not to stop sort of, this public expression of the uncertainty, of the worries, of the solidarity, of the people needed to feel that, this war is actually defending the European way of life. It's defending the values that we believe in. It's defending the future of our children. And we did that for example, every spring on the 1st of March, we have a national holiday, and we have a series of concerts. It's called Mertishor, so it's welcoming the spring. And it seemed very inappropriate 6 days after the beginning of the war, with so many issues to be resolved, to actually go ahead with the concerts. But, the Minister of Culture told me, it's actually during a crisis that you should pay more attention to, culture and to the values that you are promoting within the society, because people need to know, why are they going through this suffering? Like, what is it that gives them sense in such a difficult time? And we turned it into Concerts for Peace, where we actually included sort of a lot of messages in terms of supporting Ukraine, supporting the refugees, and ultimately I think that also helped. And together with Prime Minister Shmihal, we signed a memorandum of understanding where culture was very prominent in our cooperation, and 2023 was declared the year of Ukrainian culture in Moldova. And we had, a lot of concerts and performances. So, for example, the Mariupol theater came to Moldova, and we agreed to host them and even to let them stay in Moldova and continue their work. We had, from concerts from the Odessa Philharmonic to rock bands like Okean Elzy. And this is a very powerful way of keeping the people engaged and aware of what is happening in Ukraine. When they go to a concert like that, when they think that, these people don't have a way to express their creativity, they think about, what Ukraine is protecting us from. This really helps with the disposition of support towards Ukraine. And we, of course, will continue to support Ukraine. We understand that they are also protecting us. We are in the immediate vicinity, and it's their brave response that I'm sure kept the war away from our borders and didn't allow for the realization of those maps that Lukashenko showed on TV. And I would argue that it's this type of sort of cultural diplomacy, multilateral engagement, solidarity, paying attention to the values and the what we stand for, and helping people see. Like, for example, I've met a refugee woman. She was a playwright, and she said, I want to contribute, but the only way I can contribute is by actually expressing what I feel in a play. And she goes now with this performances around Europe. And I'm sure that when people go to these plays, it actually makes them stop for 5 minutes and think, you know, what can I do to help? Or, you know, how maybe my government is right to continue supporting Ukraine. So I think that one thing that we can all do is sort of support various representations of cultural diplomacy and soft power by Ukrainians, by other people who are shining a light on what is happening in Ukraine, and also focusing on what is it that makes you know, soft power and democracy such a powerful tool to make every person realize their potential. Because ultimately, you know, this is the best system we have to ensure that, you know, the power of the state does not impede a person from realizing their potential and from living a happy life. So thank you, and I hope we continue having engaging conversations today and tomorrow. Thank you.